In 2019, I made this video.
The thing about being a perfectionist is, if the timing is off, if the wind isn't blowing at the particular speed that I need it to be blowing, if the sun isn't beaming in my room at the perfect angle, we won't move at all. And when I say we won't move, I'm not saying that, we're trapped or even paralyzed. I'm just saying that, we won't let ourselves get to work because we feel like the conditions are just not ideal. And we can only work in ideal conditions. It's almost like I'm waiting for the right job, the right opportunity, the right excuse, I guess you can call it, to do this.
Since then, I've graduated with my bachelor's, moved to the East Coast, earned my master's, and I'm still in what seems like the exact same spot. Now you might be asking me, Chi, it's been 4 years. Why are you here exactly? What has changed? Well, this has changed. For the longest time, I've told myself that this is the path that I have to go on alone. This path of artistry, filmmaking, this path that was very, very much new to me, but I knew I still needed to make steps in at least some direction in order to make progress in this endeavor. Just like every other path in my life that required some level of sacrifice and dedication. And trust me when I say that has most definitely been my life up until this point. But what I'm beginning to learn is I don't have to go on this path alone. And yes, it is me hitting that record button. It is me going on these client shoots. But having some level of support system, at least when it comes to this endeavor, has been very new to me. Growing up or even in undergrad, I always felt like, because I was a pre-med student, I was always doing things that my peers were not. The question of, Chi, like, are you sure you want to do medicine? Are you sure you don't want to just like go into art and forge a new path elsewhere? Was a very common question that I got. And time again, my answer has been like, yes. Like, I don't feel like these two distinct interests of mine have to exist in completely different universes. A few weeks ago, I was feeling a bit down. Yeah, if I am to be completely transparent with you, until one day I was like, you know what? I got in my car. I drove like 45 minutes to an hour to go see a few of my friends up in Farmington, Connecticut, because self-isolation was not going to cut it this time. And these friends actually happened to be fellow artists, videographers, musicians. I stayed there for about 5 days. And we're just bouncing off ideas off one another. I would say like all of us have our own distinct interests, more or less. But I feel like what was the most intoxicating aspect of that week was the intentionality that came behind it. It wasn't, I guess it's something that I was never really used to. I guess that whole artistic spirit, one that I felt like I haven't really experienced since art school back when I was in high school. When I was first starting out as a creative writer, the vulnerability, the not wanting to let go of artistic dreams, which one could argue that has been way more accepted in mainstream, at least in the mainstream media, than way before. Because I remember even growing up, even the idea of becoming an entertainer or an artist to my family was laughable. But when I would say these things, right, it's like I'm a middle schooler, like I don't know what the fuck I want. But what I always knew was what I naturally gravitated towards and what I knew I was good at to begin with. But picture this, okay? Most first-gen Americans like myself grew up in families where, they probably had families who came from war-torn countries, who have spent, the bulk of their lives sacrificing in order for us to be here in this space, going to school, doing etc. And so it's very common for our families to advocate for like what is the most sustainable. You could argue maybe a little risk averse. Because for context, I'm Nigerian, okay? So like, if you know, okay? You're either going to be an engineer, lawyer, a doctor, etc. Our families growing up, right? Like the sure way to reach that success and to live a more comfortable life is through STEM. And so it's very common for us as first gens to look up to our parents and say, okay, like I want to be like them. Look at all that hard work that allowed for me to live in this life that I'm now living in. Speaking for myself, my parents are very inspiring to me, especially my mother. key reason why I was interested in medicine to begin with. I mean, growing up, going to clinics with her, seeing how she interacted with patients, etc., was something like inspiring to me, and seeing firsthand how difficult the job is. So, I mean, I guess for me, like the idea that I could pursue something other than medicine, or even like my father was an engineer, so even engineering was something that was really unbeknownst to me. But I always gravitated towards filmmaking, entertaining people. I used to dance. I used to dance Michael Jackson at family functions growing up. I used to sing at the Christmas parties. But, you kind of hit this transition point in, I guess, maybe like high school, college, where, like maybe these are just things that I enjoyed doing when I was little. It wasn't until I got into this art school for creative writing, the Governor School for the Arts, where I was immersed in the arts for the first time in my life, surrounded by like musical theater kids, vocalists, other filmmakers. And that was like the first time where I felt like, wow, I feel like I don't have to be anyone else but myself. And I guess part of the reason why I've, I guess you could say, allowed myself and my art to kind of wither away from me is the perfection that surrounds STEM, especially in the West. You have to get the grades, got to get the right test scores to get into the right school, got to volunteer at the right clinics, got to get the appropriate amount of hours as it relates to exposure and clinical, in a clinical setting. And I think like when you are in that type of environment for so long, you can't really help but to see it permeate into other facets of your life, at least in my life. And so when I was picking up filmmaking to like actually take it seriously and like begin this YouTube channel, like I knew where I wanted to be and I knew how far away I was from it. And so the very idea that, I can make something so bad in the very beginning was like, it was disgusting. I was like, ew, like, because I know my capability. I know how far I could go if I just had the time, but it's almost insane to not allow myself to go through the pitfalls, the failures, especially when I'm first beginning that journey. And so my wanting to be perfect in every single video, wanting to spend dozens of hours on every project, rewatching finished videos that I've filmed, edited, until I get it just right, and then ultimately feeling unsatisfied with the finished product. It's like, it's not even realistic. It's not fair to myself. So to have these conversations with people very similar to me and see that same burning desire, that same passion to forge their own path in the midst of that uncertainty has almost given me this sense of urgency and energy like never before. For the first time, I have found a community, and they've been right in front of me all along.
That we're not literally just focused on pure survival every minute of every day. Like, there's this innate desire to do something with our fucking energy.
That's true.
And like, for me, that's always been creating.
Yeah.
And, expression.
That's true.
Whenever I watch some of my old videos, I mean, like, do I cringe a little bit? Yes, I do. Of course. Come on. Like, it's like I'm watching this. I'm just like, who is that guy? Like, who the fuck? It's kind of it's almost emotional looking back and watching my old videos, because I think about, I guess, the conflict within myself, the perpetual questioning of, is this just a hobby? Like, should I be using all this time into this thing that, I'm very passionate about, I feel very deeply for, but, everyone around me, everything around me is reminding me that maybe I need to just stay in the, traditional lane and be like everyone else. So when I see myself in those videos, 2019, 2018, vlogging, talking into the camera like I am now, I can't help but to, be proud of him, because he's trying. I don't know. I feel like if I went back 4 years and, I had a conversation with 19-year-old Chi, would I be proud of myself, this version of myself who gave up who allowed my perfectionism to kill my creativity? Can't say now, Although I might be a little disappointed about that aspect, I would be quite surprised about the whole like masters thing. Like how that happened, Crazy. Anyway, different discussion for a different video. Yeah, I get a bit emotional watching those videos because I look at my past self and I say, like, he's really trying his best, isn't he? Unapologetically, authentically, and he's taking steps in the right direction. And I really admire him. I'm jealous of him. He's got the balls that apparently I haven't had in 4 years. God damn. And it's funny to think about because, I'm sure if I went back 4 years and I met him, he'd probably admire me a little bit too. And so to honor him, I will not allow this perfectionism to kill my creativity. I will win for him. So I was listening to the Modern Wisdom podcast, and Jordan Peterson was the guest speaker. Something that really stood out to me that he said was, sometimes you have to scale the dragon down, so much so that the dragon is at least small enough that you would be willing to move towards. So let's say the dragon is as big as your ideal self, okay? The ideal version of you. The thing about comparing yourself to the ideal version of you is that you're not even close to that ideal yet. And so once you make your first shameful step that is inevitable because you are new, you are practically an infant in this, the likelihood that you will continue moving towards that ideal is very, very tiny. And I was like, maybe my dragon is a little bit too, it's a little bit too big. Maybe I do need to scale that dragon down to a size where I would at least be willing to move towards. So when I hear things like that, what I also hear is be kind to yourself. It's okay to fail. And I think disallowing failure to exist in my life has been crippling, I think. And I'm not really getting out of it as much as I thought I was. Now, this is interesting because, you would think the opposite would be true, right? Like, do more, sleep less, go harder, be the best. And although these are intrinsic motivations, the reality for the perfectionist is the progress we make is us achieving that ideal self. So every step before then is not congratulated, is not acknowledged for progress in its minute shapes and forms in which it materializes itself. And so it's almost like us making progress is the final destination, but there is no final destination unless you make tiny incremental steps towards that ideal self. And so really, it's just a matter of acknowledging that. So I guess as it relates to what has changed now, you could argue not much. I haven't learned many new things about tackling this perfectionism. But what I do have is a different perspective and a different community around me that has given me permission to fail. All this time I've been waiting for someone to coronate me, to knight me into pursuing this very unique path. And I have no idea what that looks like. No clue. Can't say. But what I do know is I feel called to do this. And I can't say if this new perspective or this new community is the solution. But what I can say is I am now making this YouTube video for the first time in 4 years. So if anything, if this is the only W for the next 4 years, I'll take it. So yeah, I guess you're going to have to tune in for the next 4 years. We could reconvene, all right, and chat again about this conversation. Up until this point, perfectionism has won many battles, several, hundreds of battles. I have a feeling I might win this war. Yeah.
But you have to put your head up, down.
Your hand goes in.
How does it go?
Sonia will start it.
Yeah. Teamwork on 7. 1, 2.
Oh shit. 3,
5,
6,
7.
Teamwork!
I'm glad you got that because that was real.
That was.